Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. My name is John Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show here. So excited to introduce you to the guest today. It's a husband and wife team. They are on staff at a church in Oklahoma. Their names are Cole and Eva Phillips. And in addition to spending years in pastoral ministry and serving the church, they have also really found a way forward to be profitable, to be successful in the business world. They're content creators. I met them on TikTok, incidentally, and I love the content they're creating. I love the businesses that they're doing. And we just had a fun and powerful conversation. I can't wait to share it with you. So without any further ado, let's get to this episode number 46. We're titling this one Healthy Hustle with Cole and Eva Phillips. Check this out. Well, Cole and Eva, welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast, guys. We're grateful to have you on the show.
Yeah, we're excited to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's really an honor to be able to connect with you.
Now, I wish you could have met our co-host Les Hughes, my buddy, my partner in crime, but he's off today having he's not having, but his grandbaby number 11's making his entrance into the world. So Les is doing that. But here's why I'm bringing Les up right at the beginning of this. Les has given me a fair share of grief for being on this thing called TikTok, and you guys are the first of many fruits of TikTok, because it was through TikTok that I found you guys and saw some content you were putting out there. And I was like, man, you are our people. We connected. You agreed to come on the show. So thank you for being the first fruit of TikTok here on Entree Pastors. I can't wait to kind of rub this in Les's face. It's great having you guys.
I love it. Well, I have to say too, I was kind of a little bit like anti-TikTok myself before I really knew what was up. It just was like one more thing to do, one more distraction. And then it was really when we kind of learned like it's actually a really cool tool. And so because of that, I mean, like this is a prime example. We got to connect with you guys. So
Yeah. And I wasn't planning on going here in the interview, but I'm just so over Facebook. I mean, I'm kind of over a lot of social media anyway, but TikTok, I love the video format. It is very addictive. So you got to be careful with that. But I find like it feels like kind of a new frontier. I'm sure it'll have its day in the sun and then it'll die out like everything else. But I'm having fun there right now.
Yeah,
we are too. I use it really for an educational tool for me. We started one of our businesses off of TikTok, an inspirational video we watched with renting RVs. And so,
well, we'll get into all that, but I agree. See, like Les likes to make fun of me because he says it's just, teenage girl dancing videos. I'm like, oh no, I've learned so much good stuff from TikTok, from recipes that I cook in the firehouse to, building home construction, remodel type stuff. Like just a ton of good stuff. And now there's pastor stuff on there too. So it's great.
That's right.
Love it. Well, hey, let's back up a little bit and let's give an introduction to our audience of who you guys are, where you are in the world, where you're serving. And let's talk first about how you got into pastoral ministry. Tell me a little bit about your journey into that.
Yeah, of course. Well, my name's Cole. This is Eva. We live out here in Oklahoma City. We actually met here in Oklahoma City in 2008 when she came to our church to be an intern. A little bit of both of our story. I grew up a pastor's kid. Really from the day I was in the womb till now, I've always been around ministry and around church. And at 20 years old, went to Bible college to pursue pastoral ministry. And that through a series of events led me to Oklahoma City to be on staff at a church out here. And then a couple years later, Eva came out and she became an intern, and then she chased me around a little bit.
Lies.
And and asked me to marry her. How all that goes.
Of course. That's exactly how it went.
Yeah. That was romantic.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been married?
We just celebrated 11 years in June.
Awesome.
A few weeks ago. 11 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so pastoral ministry has been a part of that for the entirety of y'all's relationship.
We came back from the honeymoon and we were college and young adults pastors
Yep.
together. So it was pretty much instantly from the day we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, did you grow up, Eva, hoping to marry into a pastor's family? Like, was that something you were kind of looking for since you chased him around? And
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting because my dad was military and did a lot of travel for a long time. So I kind of had like my list of like things that I don't want. So like, I adore my dad, but I did not want to marry, into the military just because I knew what that took. And so, when God called me to ministry when I was 15, I didn't really understand the full picture of what it looked like, but I did know that I felt like, whoever God had for me, we were supposed to be walking that out together. I didn't necessarily know it would be a pastor per se, but I did kind of have an expectation that it would be somewhere in the ministry spectrum for sure.
yeah, awesome. Well, let's talk about calling for just a moment, because one thing that I find, and by the way, I grew up as a pastor's kid as well. So Cole, I think when I connected with you, you and I established that similarity pretty quickly. But so I grew up in a setting where there was such a heaviness placed on this idea of calling. And I think it's a great thing. I do believe that God calls us. I believe that God has a calling upon our lives. And some of us, he'll tap on the shoulder and say, I want you to serve in this particular capacity in a leadership role in the church. So I'm not diminishing that. I think that's a real thing. But I also see where for so many pastors then to pivot in their ministry or in their career, or to add something to it and to go in maybe multiple directions at the same time, can become so challenging because they have this sense of calling. Obviously, you guys have kind of figured that out along the way. So let's talk about that. Like how, you say you felt called to ministry at a young age. Cole, you grew up in it. It's not synonymous with you're going to do it necessarily, but from a young age, you felt called in that direction. So then how do you find permission to say, we're going to also launch a business over here on the side? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. For us, it's been a journey. It wasn't a moment or a sermon or a
Sure.
book I read that got me there. When I was 20 years old and I went to Bible college, I was able to connect with the leader of that college. And we were having a conversation at a Christmas party. And I said, if you were to read a book about business and recommend a book about business, what book would that be? And the first thing he said back to me was Rich Dad Poor Dad. So this is a pastor at the time, 50 years old, and he pushed me towards that book. I don't know to this day why I asked that question, because at the time I was on full-on pursuit of what would be traditional pastoral ministry. But there was something in me that just was interested in business. And what I found was like that book pulled me into a direction that I didn't really even know was possible. My dad was a pastor, a great pastor, an amazing pastor, but he by no means was a businessman. And so I never saw that modeled to me. But I started finding out that I started getting drawn into this education of what it meant to be a business person. And it was almost like one meeting after another. I would meet a pastor that had a business. I'd meet a guy that was in real estate that also pastored churches. And my spiritual father, who passed away last year, he always told us sometimes you need to be exposed to see something possible to know that it's possible. Once you get that exposure, your mind opens up. And I started seeing, and I know it was God ordained, it was sort of the leading of my life that he had, that I started seeing it's possible to be a pastor and a business person. Okay, so right there, a traditional mindset was broke down in my mind, in my life, and I started pursuing it. And so early on in ministry, I started flipping cars. I mean, I would go to car auctions on Fridays, my day off, and I'd buy a car for $1,000. I'd put it on, at the time, Craigslist, and I'd sell it for $2,000. I'd sit it in the front yard, whatever I had to do. And it's just like, I believe God often leads us to our destiny. He doesn't just tell us what it is. Your destiny is not determined by you. It's discovered by you. I walk into what God has for me, and he led me to the business world.
Yeah.
Through a series of life events and connections and relationships.
I think, go ahead if you were going to say something, Eva.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that for a lot of people, pastors specifically, I hear that's a common story, and I share that as well, that for years I kind of had this fascination with business. I listened to a lot of business podcasts, read a lot of business books. I've always loved those stories of, the startup, the success of entrepreneurs. And again, it wasn't until much later in life that I started to look back and realize, God used some of my entrepreneurial giftings in the church as a church planter, growing a multi-site church, but I didn't realize until, recently in my life, looking back, like, I think God has made me to be an entrepreneur, and I don't think he's upset about it. I think he's invited me into this. And so one of the big things we do at Entre Pastors is try to help other pastors hear that permission, that it's okay. You can do more than just be in this traditional role of pastoring. Not that we're trying to talk anybody out of being a pastor or serving in that role, but to say we can do more than just that. And as I see the future of the church unfolding, I see this is going to be even more necessary and more good for pastors to be out in the marketplace. So let's tell a little bit of your story of getting into the marketplace. I mean, you've kind of had this entrepreneurial thing from early on in your ministry. Tell the story of kind of how you all got into business and what are the businesses you're doing today. I see you sitting in a mattress store, so either we caught you in the middle of mattress shopping or that has something to do with your businesses. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, he had a lot of, ministry experience working in the church. I worked more in our early years of marriage. I worked more in corporate America and learned a lot of things along the way that it's really cool because I've been able to implement that. And so you talk about learning just this shift in your mind that we're so small minded with ministry and thinking that it's just working at the church, 9 to 5, 6, whatever, how many days a week it might be for you. And so just recognizing that God moves in multiple arenas. But for us, our business came out of, we were always kind of like, little side hustles here and there, but never really saw it as really expanding into a business until it was about 3 years ago. 4 years ago now, we were at actually the worst financial position in our life. We were broke as we'd ever been. At this point, we had kids. And, typically for us, the car thing was like kind of our go-to. It was our extra stream of income to compensate, I was, of course, in full-time ministry at that time as well myself. I transitioned out of corporate America, working full-time in the ministry. And so the car business just dried up, interest rates got more competitive out there at the lots. And so we just kind of, lost that stream of income. So next thing you know, we were actually on our way to a pastor's retreat, and I'm sitting there with a notebook and I'm like, okay, we really need to talk through this budget and really figure out a game plan. Cause I think we had just a couple $100
to our name, period. Small out plan, savings, everything.
Yeah. And
real quick to that. So am I hearing you basically at that point in your journey, you were primarily relying on your income as pastors plus a little bit of a side hustle, but not anything more than that? Is that a fair snapshot?
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. And when that side hustle dried up, I know looking back, we see God's hand in all of this. He dried that up because it was just enough to keep me a little bit satisfied personally, but it wasn't enough to help people. It wasn't enough to reach out into new endeavors. And so we were on the way to Branson, Missouri, and we did our budget. We were under $200 to our name, and my personality has always been, I don't like to not have any money. It's a safety, a security to me. And we were broke, 2 kids at home, a mortgage payment, all of that, driving auction cars. I mean, we were just as broke as we could be. And I remember God, I felt that he said, the car business has dried up. It's done. I have taken my hand off of that. I came back to Oklahoma and we just knew something's got to give here. We've got to be able to start a business that sustains our life. I don't want to go to my pastor and say, I need a raise. I just didn't want to do that.
Or I need to quit this job.
Yeah. I didn't feel like that was the right. I felt like I don't have those 2 options. So what is my right option here? And a long story short, I had priced out getting our house painted a year before, and 3 contractors had come, and every one of them that come gave me a price, and they were all the same. And I looked at those prices thinking, okay, I'm pretty good at math. I know how much profit's in there based on, I know how to paint walls and I know how much labor it takes. I just hated painting. And that's the only reason I had it priced out. It was like God reminded me of that. This was November of 2018. You said you could paint. You said you could make money there. Are you going to try that? I texted my brother-in-law, her little brother, and he had just painted his parents' house, bought a spray rig and all that. I said, hey, if I get a paint job for us, would you be willing to do it? He texts back, yeah, I'd do it. So I, being a go-getter that I am, hopped on Facebook and downloaded some pictures of some paint jobs, and I'm a professional painter.
There you go.
Right? I get a bid on a job in North OKC. I go bid it, and I didn't know how to price it. And so I priced it to where I would make some money, but I'd get the job. I figured I'd be less than everybody else. I was, and I got the job. I texted my brother-in-law and I said, hey, got a paint job. His response back to me was, wait, what? Question mark. And I remember exactly that night we went and we sort of celebrated. We went over to a Chinese restaurant that night. Yeah. And Eva looked at me when I got that approval, because I got it through email. Mm-hmm. She said, this is about to change everything. Like, it'll never. I had no idea what that meant. And that 4 years later, anyways, I'm not going to jump ahead on that. She was right. It changed. That moment changed everything. I learned how to start a business that wasn't a side hustle. It was a business. 3 months later, we had employees. Obviously, we had insurance. We had taxes to deal with. I had accounting. I all of a sudden had a real business. I wasn't keeping cash in a safe in my house to buy cars with. I was running an actual business, and that was within just 3 short months.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So then what? I know that's not, that was just the beginning, and there's more beyond that. So keep going. Then how did things progress from there?
I believe the Bible says the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. We believe that he guides us in life. Sometimes you may not know that next step, but you got to move your foot towards it, and then it's going to land on solid ground. It was amazing at how my yes led to connections that led me to another question of yes. And this is what I mean by that. We did the paint job in November, but then that paint job was over. And I said, what am I going to do next? Well, I knew how to hang Christmas lights, and it was Christmas. So I hopped on Facebook and advertised that. I had 2 buddies from the church. I said, hey, I'll hire you for the month of December. We're going to go put Christmas lights up all over OKC. We got something like 15 or 20 jobs. And it was good money, because that's a sort of a profitable industry, little plug out there. Hanging Christmas lights makes money. But then we got to the end of December and Christmas was over, and I said, what's next? I've got 2 guys I just hired for a whole month. I would actually like to keep them as employees. So I started going and reaching out on Facebook again for sheetrock jobs, paint jobs, things like that we had in our skill set. But I also started praying into God, I want this to be more. Connection after connection just kept happening. I know it was supernatural, because it wasn't, I couldn't force this to happen. By March of the 29th, that would have been 2019. Yeah. We're 4 months into the business. My father-in-law went to a family reunion in Ohio, and he came back and said, hey, I just talked to Eva's cousin, and he's doing retail maintenance in Ohio. He said he told me if you wanted to do something like that, he would give you the connections in OKC, because they're always looking for retail maintenance down here. I remember calling him. I called the guy. I was like, hey, Britt, what can I do here to get retail maintenance going in OKC? It was within 2 or 3 emails. All of a sudden, I'm working in Starbucks. I'm like, my mind was being blown every new connection I made, that we became primary retail maintenance providers for Starbucks in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. I'm like back and forth every day of the week doing retail maintenance jobs while still working at the church. But it was like one connection after another. And I can just keep going on and on with that.
Mounting TVs.
And we would just do about anything. And it just kept getting refined. I started getting some mentors. I found 2 guys that I'm like, I really want to go where you are. And I would take them to lunch or take them to breakfast, pick their brain on, if you were in my shoes at this point in your ministry, or in your business, what would you do?
Real quick, were those guys doing retail maintenance when you say you wanted to get to where they are, or were they even at a different level altogether, those mentors that you reached out to?
They're in the construction industry, these 2. Okay. Particularly, one is a roofer, a largest roofer in the state of Oklahoma. The other one does commercial building projects. Because ultimately, I wanted to be a contractor. I was starting to refine that. Like, I think contracting is where I fall into. I think if I can become a real contractor, I will make a lot of money and do a lot of good. So I found 2 mentors in that world. And then, talk about the pastor that told me to read that book and was a mentor to me. He was pretty business savvy. And so I spent a lot of time with him on picking apart how to do, how to do your taxes properly, how to run your books, what is a P&L, just things that matter to business. And then, so, we fast forward a little bit, and I think we can tell them the story of the mattress store, and how that came about, because that was not long after that.
Yeah, exactly. So this just kind of goes back to the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. And so we were recognizing that we were just leaning in, and there just was seemingly a grace. And so
let me say this.
Yes.
As we were going to the mattress store, this is important. I was building a contracting business. But I was building a contracting business because I knew construction just from my experience in ministry. She had no place to fit there. And I remember us having conversations at that time. We feel like we're supposed to be doing all this together. But she's like, but I don't like to do accounting. So I because she tried to do QuickBooks for us. She's like, I can't stand this. This is horrible.
Yeah.
We need to hire pros to do
Too
this.
boring.
Yeah. And then she's like, I don't know anything about how to budget for contracting or how to market for contracting. There's no place for me in what my business is called is Phillips and Co. There's no place for me there.
Right.
And so we started praying, okay, well, where's Eva?
Yeah, exactly. So, I was helping do admin, but obviously there was more to me than admin. I wanted something for myself. And so we actually went to a pastor's conference down in Texas. And I actually wasn't even supposed to go that weekend. But it anyway worked out to where there was somebody that dropped out and they needed me to go in and help, facilitate that. So I was literally in the room setting up like for breakfast, like just kind of helping set up and get the room ready. And this girl walks in who was on staff at this church. She was her and her husband were children's pastors. She walks in and we're just making small talk. And so I'm asking her, where's your husband? And she's like, oh, he had a mattress delivery. I'm like, a mattress delivery? Is he a delivery driver? She said, oh no, we have a mattress showroom and he had to go deliver. So he had a really big order. He had to go deliver the beds. I'm like, really? Well, one of the jobs that I used to have was I was a salesperson at a high-end furniture store. And one of my bread and butter was high-end mattresses, or any mattress really for that matter. So my ears kind of perked up. I'm like, wait, you guys own a high-end mattress showroom and your kids' pastor's here? So I'm like, all right, we're going to have to talk later after this. So, that then led into a conversation and she's like, look, this is really more so my husband's thing than mine. She's like, why don't you give him a call and he'll give you all the information you need to know. And the rest was history. I gave him a call and then he connected me to the guy who was also a pastor that helped him open up the store. So it just, one thing led to another. And the next thing you know, I've got a mattress store.
Yeah. And that was sort of her sweet spot. I was good at starting the business. Mattresses is her zone, and it sustained her. And that was really the business that allowed her to give her salary back to the church while still remaining a pastor on our team.
So let's unpack that just briefly, that story. Tell me a little bit more, because this mattress by appointment is a fairly new, from my understanding, a fairly new concept. And I see it looks like it's kind of popular. It's gaining some momentum. So maybe explain what that is. How is that different than just opening up a retail, 9-to-5 furniture store? Tell us a little bit about that business model. And then, if you will, share the story of, being in that position to be able to give your salary back to the church. Share some of that if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So a appointment only. So there are some like stores called Mattress by Appointment, and then we're not affiliated with them necessarily, but it's the same model. So we are an appointment only mattress showroom. There's multiple, benefits to that. Number one, it's privately owned. It's mom and pop. There's, it saves you the cost on overhead. You're not having to pay somebody to sit up here all day to keep the lights on, the AC running, just the little things that can add up over time. So the appointment only model, it just gives, because the consumers are getting smarter and they're wanting things that's quicker. They're wanting things that's more convenient. I mean, you think about it, you can get your groceries delivered to you now. You can do so many things without ever having to leave the house. So in this day and age, a lot of people, and I'm not against it. I loved working at the big box store. I enjoyed it. But, a lot of people nowadays, they don't like going in there and dealing with the hassle of the retail, the salesperson, feeling like they're being sold. They just don't like that. They want what's convenient. They want to know that they're going to come into a place where they can make an appointment, get their bed. We significantly, and this really isn't gimmicky, it really is true. I do help you save a lot of money on overhead because you're not paying for the fancy expensive showroom and for, all the employees running around. You're not paying for all that stuff. You're just paying for the bed. And so that model alone, the customer tends to lend to. And for me, what I love about it is I'm a mom of, 2 children. I'm a part of the ministry, and this gives me the flexibility to make appointments at my convenience. So of course I try to be workable with the customer, but the beauty of it is it's really on my terms and in my timeframes and what works for me. And in our world, like, flexibility is so key. So this definitely allows for the flexibility of being able to do both. And
the company we're part of is Mattress Direct America, and the guy that started it in Florida is a pastor, and he's a church planner. And
Okay.
It was a church plant, and he's like, the church can't pay me. I don't have time. If I go get a job, I feel like I'm going to be not spending as much time with the ministry that I need to get this thing off the ground. And he figured this out, and he started doing it himself, and then he started making it available to pastors. So his primary goal is to get people that, he'll take people that aren't pastors, but he loves pastors getting this resource because it's at your own pace, and it produces a good profit. And it's a straightforward model. It's very simple.
Yeah.
You post these listings on social media, you get appointments
Book the
booked,
appointments,
you get them to the store, you
get
give them
them a
what you
bed,
got, and you pretty much get them out.
get them in and out.
I love it. I love it. You guys are going to have to hook me up with that pastor, and we'll get him on to share that with our audience as well, because I'm sure that would be of interest to some.
He's a cool guy. He's a really cool guy. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Well, thank you. So keep going on the salary part. We didn't get to that part of the story, and then I want to go back to another question, but keep going.
No, for sure. So, this was beginning, just the demand was increasing. So now I'm administrating for our businesses. I'm running this now. And there was just kind of this pull between, me being full-time at the church, me being here. It just was one of those things that we just kind of began to discuss and pray. And we just felt peace about me coming off of the full-time payroll. And so we wanted to be able to give my salary back to the church. And so I still very much am present. I'm a part of I'm a part of the pastoral team. We're part of the pastoral team there. I'm present. I go to the meetings. I help with things, when I can.
You're the women's director.
I direct the women's ministry there. And so, I basically, my heart was God. Like, I still feel like this is I still feel like this is an assignment for me. So, what I say is that where I spent my time from 9 to 5 changed, but my assignment didn't change.
Yeah.
And so with that, I wanted to still be able to, fulfill that assignment and live within that role. So we totally gave my salary back. And I get paid solely from our businesses.
Yeah. And it was cool because so often we see people when they leave a church staff to go get a secular job, so to speak. It's a one or the other.
Yeah.
It's not both and. Especially when you already have been paid by the church. That's almost like I quit my job and left. And we were very clear with our senior pastor. We want this to be a blessing to the church. So here's our contribution. She's not going to be receiving a salary here anymore. We want to give that back, but you still get her time. She's still going to contribute at the level she's at now. She's going to attend meetings. She's going to be a part of this church. She's going to disciple and mentor. All that's going to stay the same. And you don't have to pay her for it. That is what we want this business to be for us.
Quick follow-up to that, and I love the heart behind that. I've often said my goal for our pastors is not that they can do well in business so that then they can also pastor for free because it's expected. I'm very okay if a pastor's at a place of like, man, we have so blessed financially with our businesses or these multiple streams of income that I just give it back to the church, my salary back. So I'm thrilled if that comes out of that place of abundance and just the overflow, but not from this message of, hey, pastor, you owe it to your church to go earn a living over here so that they don't have to pay you. And so this is really a nuanced question. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but is this where they still give you a salary and you just turn around and sign it right back to them? Or did you just say, take us off the payroll entirely? At the end of the day, it's the same result. I just didn't know if this was where they're still have you in the budget and you're giving it back, or you're just like, hey, I'm here, but don't pay me.
Yeah.
So we're both different. So she's that way. She gave like off payroll, like they still, want to contribute to some things that she does, but she's off the payroll. Me, it's a give back. So it's a salary received. It helps me with taxes, just to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
Still receive it, but we give it back from my salary. And the reason on that is for taxes. It does help us out. And I agree. I'm glad you said that. Here's the deal. I know we were graced to do this.
Sure.
I don't want pastors to ever feel like, and we're trying to be careful with that, even with our TikToks, that this is a call for everyone.
Right.
Because I don't believe that's true. I believe everyone has the grace and a measure of grace that God's called them to do. It was sort of hidden in my heart. And I would say it over the years, for 15, 20 years now. I would love to not get paid by the church. It was like something that God had put inside of me. However, we've got senior pastors at our church that I wouldn't suggest that for them. I actually, if you came and said that, I'm like, no, you wouldn't need that. This grace isn't on you. You need to focus because he needs to focus on a certain role that does need to get paid.
Sure.
I know you said you're ADD. I'm actually ADHD, and part of that grace, I think, is that I can do multitasking because we can hyper focus a little bit. So maybe that's a little rabbit trail there, but I feel like it is a grace on our life to do both ends.
Well, really, this whole conversation is because there are some senior pastors who can do multiple things. There are some senior pastors that it's like, man, I can't really focus on anything other than this. And so even with our big message, our overall message to pastors, it's very much an individual thing. It's between you and the Lord. It's not prescriptive what we're putting out here. It's not for everyone. And I still, to the pay portion of it, this is just my personal conviction. It's not that I don't think pastors should get paid. I think I can make a strong biblical case that we should pay our pastors, especially if there's a significant amount of time that they're pouring into the work that they're doing. And so for multiple reasons, I love the model of, pastor, you get paid regardless. And what you do with that income is 100% between you and the Lord. What I know from many in our community is they're doing exactly that. It's going right back to the church. But for a lot of reasons, I'm okay with the church still paying them. And I'm also okay if they cash some of those checks from time to time. It's like you said, it's not prescriptive of, because we're doing it, this is everyone's model that they should be following, or even necessarily the goal. But to me, it's a natural outcome and outflowing. As God blesses pastors in business, it puts them in a place that can take some serious pressure off of a church financially, if the need is there for that. So I love that. So let me back up just a little bit to your story, Cole, as far as it pertains to the retail. Well, really, I'll go all the way back to the time you picked up a paintbrush and you're like, I hate painting, but I'm going to, kind of introduce myself to the world as a professional painter. And then it started leading to all these other things. Where I wanted to go was with this question. And then you said something that's even more intriguing to me. I was going to ask you, like, did you have a background where this is kind of part of a skill set that you already brought to the table? And then I heard you mention something about, you connected it to ministry, like you maybe were doing some of this in ministry. So tell me more about that, because some of our people listening to this are like, not only do I hate painting, I don't know how to paint. I don't know a thing about sheetrock. So tell us a little bit about your background that made it easier for you, or maybe a natural thing for you to say, yep, I paint. Sure, I do sheetrock. Yep, I can hang Christmas lights. I can go into a Starbucks and do maintenance for them. How did you have the confidence or the skill set to do that?
Great question. And I think that's a very valid question, because I did look in my tool bag and see what I had.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things most things I cannot do. So when we moved to Oklahoma, I got put on staff here, and I was one of the first people we had a group of younger guys, probably 25 and younger. We had about 8 of us that were all in an internship college kind of program. I was the first one to get invited to the pastoral team meetings. I was 23, 24 years old, and our senior pastor, I don't know why, but he pulled me into that group. I never got to preach. I never got to speak. It was like he sat me at a table. And when I was 24, he handed me the facilities director position, which I am telling you, I hated that role. I have no idea why he gave it to me. I wasn't familiar with facilities or any kind of construction type stuff, but he hands me the facilities director position on a 32-acre campus with 150,000 square foot of buildings under roof, with 52 AC units, with roofs that leak all the time. And let's do some upgrades, and let's put, a lot of money into upgrading this property. And when I'm telling you I hated that job, that was probably one of the most miserable seasons of my life. And I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I'm like, why am I in this role? All my buddies over there don't get to come to the pastors' meetings, but they get to go preach. I'm going to pastors' meetings, and then I'm crawling up on the roof to meet a contractor that afternoon.
Yeah.
Like, I wore boots and jeans to work. Everybody else is wearing their pretty little polos and dress pants. And I'm like, what is wrong with this? I'm out cutting the grass in the middle of July in Oklahoma. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Those days are the days I'm living in the fruit of today, because I learned stuff managing that building the hard way. For 4 years, I would come home at night, because we got married during that season, and she knew it. I couldn't stand it. I'm getting in the middle of the night, phone calls of alarms going off, and it's just that story can continue.
Leaks.
Leaks. Just I learned how to manage a building. I learned how I had to hire sheetrock guys, and I watched them put it on the wall. Gotcha. And I went down to the city hall to get permits pulled for remodel construction projects, and all of that I learned through Google and YouTube videos and asking people. So it was a tool bag thing. It was, I turned around and said, I can paint, because I just oversaw, a $120,000 remodel in which we painted the whole building. So I actually knew paint contractors that I could hire. I had all the connections, right? So it's sort of like, it was in my tool bag, kind of, if you use the illustration of God sort of equips us for what he has for us. He equipped me without me knowing it. I always like to use the illustration of Karate Kid. So I don't know if you're a Karate Kid fan, but I don't know.
Oh yeah.
You're a Karate Kid fan, right? And we can go back to the original. I ain't talking about the new ones, the 1980 Karate Kid. And
the real one.
Yeah, the real one. And Daniel, he wanted to learn karate because he got beat up by some boys out at the beach. And he wanted to learn karate. And he went to Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi said, yeah, I'll teach you karate. That's a short story. And he said, come see me tomorrow. And when he came saw him tomorrow, he walked out on the porch and he showed him a junkyard full of cars. And he showed him wax on, wax off. And Daniel would try to do it wrong. No. Wax on, wax off. And he waxed cars all day. Next day he came back. Now paint the fence. Paint the fence. Up, down, paint the fence. And at the end of the day, Daniel just ticked. He's like, I don't work 2 days for you. You ain't taught me one karate move. And Mr. Miyagi says to him, Daniel, son, wax on, wax off. And he's doing it. And he starts throwing karate punches, and he knows he's blocking them. He's like getting these motions down in something he didn't think he was getting it from. And I realized that season of my life, when I was up on that roof, messing with them crazy air conditioning units, I was learning something that is now putting me on a podcast with you 15 years later to share a principle in God's kingdom. Right?
I love that.
It is the journey that sometimes God teaches you when you don't want to be taught and you don't know what you're getting taught. But you turn around and say, man.
Well, I love that, because one of the things that we do with pastors, one of the biggest limiting beliefs that we see of a pastor who desires to do something in the marketplace is this thought of, man, all I am is a pastor. I went to Bible college, I went to seminary, and we're trying to help them see you have skill sets that you've honed in ministry, in pastoral ministry, that are valuable out in the marketplace. In your case, specifically, you had some very real practical hands-on experience with facilities. And I'm getting the picture of you. Like, I know your profile just from what you're describing. Back in that season, you're just a guy who loves the church, who's like, give me a place on the team. I want to be around it. And you're willing to step in and serve wherever. And God honored that faithfulness. Like, I've seen, I mean, I was that guy too at one time. I was the maintenance guy in my church years ago. And, when my church back then asked me to serve as a deacon at a very young age, my head kind of swelled up for just a minute, thinking they obviously see something in me. What they saw was someone who was involved and who served. And I've quickly learned that that's all it was just a serving role and doing more of the same. But I'm getting that visual, like you were people that were just willing to be a part of it. And now God's using those skills that were honed inside the church or within the church ministry. Now you're using them out in the marketplace and probably getting paid a little better than what the church pays for those types of things too.
So that's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you got a few other businesses first of all, keep going on. Tell me where you're at today with the retail maintenance, and then tell me about a few other business streams that you've got. Because just watching you all at a distance on TikTok, I'm like, you have a few things going here, and I love it. So where are you at today in the business?
Yeah, so retail maintenance is still going, blowing strong, big deal, and it's actually bigger than it's ever been. In fact, I had to hire a full-time project manager just for retail maintenance.
Wow.
That's all he does every day is make sure that those tickets are getting done. And he's got guys that work for him to get the tickets done. We're at that level. So we're doing all 7-Eleven, Aldi. I could go down the list of just major retailers that we're doing maintenance for statewide Oklahoma.
Wow.
We're driving 3 hours away. But I'm going to tell this story because I do think it's significant here. Our pastor passed away in January 2021, so a year and a half ago. He passed away on January 19th. On January 15th, we had our first worship night of the year as a Friday night at our church. And at that worship night, we have an encounter with God. We're worshiping, and then at the end, our pastor gets up and he receives an offering. And I looked at Eva and I said, I think I know what I'm supposed to give tonight. And it was the biggest offering we had ever given, and it was just a random Friday night. It was not prompted. Nobody from the stage says give the biggest offering you've ever given. Just normally take up a service offering. I gave the biggest offering we had ever given, and no sooner I did texted it, put my phone in my pocket. A trusted prayer intercessor of our church walked over, and she was in tears. And she said, I feel like God's given you the most explosive year in ministry you've ever had, and you're going to expand, and everybody that you connect to is going to expand. And, there's more to it than that, but she really just felt that on her heart. She walked away.
More.
Yeah, she said, you're going to give more than you ever gave before. You'll give more.
And she didn't know. She wasn't like the treasurer who just saw a text message come through going, oh, my goodness.
This
That's
is just
cool.
a church lady who's been a very strong voice to us. She's in her 60s, and she's always been a sort of a mentor to us.
Very cool.
So we get in the car that night. It's about 9 o'clock. Eva said, what do you think about that word? And my response to her was, I don't have time for explosive growth. I said, that's just being honest. I said, I am now maxed out to my limit in the business. I'm at the church every day working my butt off. I'm a dad to 2 kids. I'm stressed to the max. I don't have time for explosive unless God has a strategy change. I said, that may be what he's going to do. 4 days later, our senior pastor passes away tragically. We were there when it happened, and it just shut all of our worlds down for a little while. We were very close to him, very, very godly man, invested in my life for 20 years. That was devastating. A month later, after his passing, it was through connections and conversations. I did not intend to go down this road. It just sort of happened. We purchased our first flip property. Mm-hmm. We flipped our first house. Never had done that in my life. Mm-hmm. It was my first go at it. God supernaturally gave me the connections to get the money. I remember it was a Friday, and I was supposed to close the next Friday on the flip mm-hmm. house, and I needed $27,000 more that I didn't have. And I said to Eva, I don't know how to get it. And why are you not stressed? She's like, God will send it to us. Just keep making phone calls. Yeah. And I did. And we got our first flip property. Well, we fast forward a year from then. That was about 1.5 years ago. We're on property number 7. Wow. We have a full crew now running flip properties. That's all they do. I got the full crew running retail maintenance. That's all they do. We just made a connection with a large water restoration company in town that they gave us all their water reconstruction projects. So it was just like God in that moment, like expanded us here. Mm-hmm. And then it was like a month later, we saw the expansion come naturally. He took my mind to a new level. My life scripture is Ephesians 3:20. Yeah. He is able to do exceedingly abundantly beyond all I can ask or think with my brain, according to his riches and glory. What that says is he has to get my mind to a new level. And when he gets my mind to that level, then he does more than my mind can think. So if I think small, I get a little bit bigger than small. If I think big, I get a little bit bigger and big. If I think huge, I get a little bit bigger and huge. I get whatever I get more than my mind gets me to. Mm-hmm. And so he did that. That night that prayer happened, that lady came over and told us that. My mind went to another level instantly. And a month later, I purchased our first flip property. So now what we're doing is we've got Skyline Homes Oklahoma, mm-hmm. which purchases and rehabs homes. I got Phillips & Co., which reconstructs homes, retail maintenance, stuff like that. We've got EAB Consulting, which is exceedingly abundantly beyond consulting. And that's where we're starting to go to churches on weekends and do business seminars, do phone calls with business people to try to help people get their feet started, learn some of the pitfalls that me teach them how to not make some of the pitfalls we made. Mm-hmm. We got her mattress company,
business,
and then the RV and Turo business, which is another surprise. Yeah. That's more of a side hustle, but it's a lucrative side hustle, guys.
So. And that's one you found on TikTok, right? Where you're renting out RVs and whatnot. So that's cool. And Turo, that's like an app, kind of like a Airbnb for cars. Is that a good way to describe that?
Yeah. Exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I love all of that, and there's so much more I want to unpack. Here's what I think I'm going to do for the sake of time, because I need to wrap this up here pretty quick. For our backstage conversation, I'm going to ask you both, and you can go in any direction you want with this. I'm going to ask both of you to give your top piece of advice, and it can be 2 or 3 things or just one thing, but what is one thing minimum that you would pass on it to a pastor that's where you were a few years ago? They can identify, not so much with where you are today. They can identify with, we've got $200 to our name. We're broke. We don't like where we're at right now. We need to do something. I'd love to have you guys both speak into that pastor's life and just give, again, what's 1 or 2 things that you'd say to encourage them, piece of advice. As we wrap up this interview, I would ask you this. If someone wanted to connect with you guys, what's the best way for them to reach out and see more about what you're doing and connect with you all? How do they find you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a website, healthyhustle.life. But I would say a good email.
With TikTok as well.
TikTok
is at Healthy Hustle.
It's our, the @ Healthy Hustle Life.
So healthyhustle.life website. TikTok's at Healthy Hustle Life. And then you could email one of us. My email is Cole, COLE, @phillipsokc.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes of the show. Guys, we're just scratching the surface. I'd love to keep picking your brain, but I'm going to wrap up this portion of the interview, and we'll join you all backstage here in just a moment. Thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share part of your story with our audience. I'm grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate this
thanks
today.
for having us.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.